Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy4U, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionises the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy4U, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easy4u.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me again. It's Sabrina here on the show today on Teachers Talk Radio. Today, I've got a treat for you. We're going to be talking about the concept of coaching culture in education. And we're joined by Lucy Wood, who's going to share her wisdoms and experiences with coaching. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself, Lucy?
Oh, hi, Sabrina. It's such a real pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me. I don't know about wisdoms, but I was sure I think I've asked more questions than any nuggets of answers. But yeah, can't wait to be talking about coaching culture. I have had, I think, over 20 years now in mainly primary education, in a real diverse range of settings, mostly in the English state sector, but more recently in the international school sector, working in 3 to 18 all through organisations in Japan and the Netherlands. And in that time, I've had just the immense privilege to work with some incredible colleagues, some of which who may recognise that they're coaches in their role or being coached, and others who I think have shown those real coaching behaviours, but may not necessarily name themselves as such. And currently, following the birth of my baby number 3, 18 months ago, I'm in this really lucky position at the moment to have been able to take an extended time away from the vibrancy of school life until August, when me and the family are packing up and off for another international school adventure. So I'm currently indulging in a year of full-time study for an MA, and that's given me that space and time to really be reflexive and really kind of delve into some of the murky labyrinth of some of these big concepts in education. So yeah, can't wait to get stuck in, because I know this is your area of expertise as well, Sabrina. This is your wheelhouse.
Well, yeah, I do partake in a bit of coaching, mentoring, and I suppose in education we all do in some capacity. So you coach your students, you mentor them, and you know, if you're a manager, you coach your staff. And I suppose, and that is what I really enjoy about education. You are constantly working with people towards targets and goals and aspirations, and helping and supporting them to get there. So I don't think anyone in education can say it's not their wheelhouse. So I think this is why this topic is so critical to our listeners. You mentioned earlier there that you do some international work. Well, you are more recently. So could you talk about kind of the coaching in general, and then could you explain a little bit about how it might differ if you were in a UK school to a international school? And is there a difference in perception to coaching internationally?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, in the real complex labyrinth of educational discussion, I think wherever you are in the world, and whether you're in international schools or state schools, I think coaching culture and the term coaching often lacks the clarity that we might hope for in our profession that's arguably dedicated to fostering deep thinking. And I think it's about the contextual nature of the coaching in your specific locality. So it's less, I think, about whether you're in a state school or an international school or an independent school. It's really about a community-led shared understanding of that. I mean, when I was considering visualizing the ambiguity of something like a coaching culture, the increasing, I guess, proliferation of it in education, I think of an Ouroboros, which is, I don't know if you know, like a snake, the ringed snake. It's kind of this ancient symbol, I think from Egyptology, which is depicting like a serpent or a dragon that eats its own tail.
Yes. Yeah.
Get them on tattoos and bracelets. And it's kind of this symbol for me. It's a positive symbol, but it kind of, for me, reminds me of the numerous interpretations of coaching and the numerous applications of it. And the fact that there are so many approaches, whether you're in an international school or in a state school, because some of it, your listeners might know that it's come from psychology or psychotherapy, some has come from the management discourse in the corporate world, from kind of high performance sport or life coaching. It's a real nebulous concept. So for me, the term can be used liberally to mean a broad range of interventions and approaches, but it's the context to actually understand what's taking place under that umbrella of coaching, I would say.
So within that, do you find that people abuse the term coaching, or have you, in your experience, encountered where there are misconceptions around coaching?
I think, yeah, I mean, in the best examples, rather than kind of when those potential risks comes up, in the best examples, coaching is a form, I think, of sense making. It's like rooted in this deep curiosity where individuals have the space to engage with their emotions, to think deeply and critically about their own assumptions and challenge the status quo. It kind of gives us as teachers and educational leaders like self-awareness, and with that self-awareness comes choices. So I think when you're talking about the potential risks of where that can be misapplied, for me, it can occur when an organisation or a school kind of just picks a generic coaching framework off the shelf, like a one-stop shop, and is trying to drop something that's ready-made into their context. Because what works in one space and one place and time, it isn't always fit for that community. I mean, arguably, coaching is a self-referential term. I mean, like you said at the beginning there, Sabrina, that everyone in education could be considered a coach or being coached at one time or another. And I think if you and a colleague think you're in this real high quality professional dialogue and you name it a coaching conversation, then who's to say it isn't? But I would say that to try and mitigate against some conflations or confusion at a local area, it is good to have a shared understanding about what we mean in our school by coaching. When we're doing coaching, when we're involved in coaching, what does that mean for us?
I was thinking now with the increase of coaching and developing staff, there's a lot of focus around staff development, CPD, and in recent years, there seems to be a massive influx of people doing coaching qualifications as part of educational leadership and management. Is that because it's something that something's been recognised, or is that because they've recognised the importance of it? And do you think it's having that impact we're looking for in what you've seen? So kind of what's triggered this interest in coaching and mentoring in education in the last decade or so, and is it doing what we want it to do?
That's a really interesting question. I think we maybe have to, if we consider maybe what in this conversation we mean by coaching, and then unpick that a little more, particularly linking to kind of, I guess, retention and teacher agency. I mean, Collective Ed have a really helpful definition where they zone in on what coaching is in like teacher coaching. And I think for the purposes of considering what that means in our kind of context, they're a really helpful place to look for clarity. And they talk about coaching being a process of sustained and focused professional dialogue, where it's led by the individual, let's call them the coachee, and scaffolded by the coach. So there isn't, there isn't this kind of expert novice element to it. It's much more of an exchange of experiences and expertise, like this spirit of reciprocity. And I saw this fabulous quote, and forgive me because I can't remember where I saw it from, but it was about every coaching conversation is a joint project. And I really love that. And I think that speaks to a lot about the collegiality that you can find within education. I also think it's become important as professionals. I don't know about you, but I've never met a colleague who doesn't come to work every day to try to learn something new and try their best. And, you know, I've certainly had days where it's all gone to absolute pot and I come away and I think, oh, my days. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, we're kind of self-directed learners as educationalists. And I think the process of coaching is about self-directed learning, and yes, it's facilitated by high quality questioning and deep active listening and appropriate challenge. But like I said before, I think in the best examples, we're a profession where we're trying to sense make and we're trying to communicate that sense to others and be questioned and be curious. Is it an issue that there is a diversity of interpretations and applications of coaching in schools? I don't know, because actually that's part of the fabulous tapestry of recognizing the difference in all of us. But like I said, I do think if the ambiguity isn't addressed, then we do have issues. The empowerment of teachers through coaching and enabling us as a professional community to thrive, I think, is one of the reasons why we look to coaching cultures. But if we zoom out into that sort of gnarly conversation about teacher agency and retention, I can see how there's the potential of coaching there. I'm really excited that some prominent educational thinkers and talkers are starting to raise that question again, and having that difficult conversation about why are we losing some fabulous colleagues from our profession, particularly women, 30 to 39, just saying, do you know what, I this isn't for me anymore, I can't make this work. And I'm not naive enough to think that coaching is the panacea. It's not the catch at all. It's, you need another guest who knows far more about systemic complexities of teacher retention than me to talk about it. But I think what in the best examples of coaching culture in the school does, it says to staff, you are the best expert on yourself. You can have a self-regulatory cycle that's guided by where you want to go, your own personal goal setting. And for me, where I've been in those cultures myself, when I reflect back, I think the distinction was between what I feel I should value and how I should behave and what I should think about education, whereas I felt that I could actually do what I felt about it, what I actually did believe and did value. And I was able to do that in a really safe space where if I did muck up, and that happened all the time, I did so within a culture that had me, that was okay, I could take risks. So I think, there's a real potential of coaching there to help the fantastic expertise that we know is in our profession to thrive and stop it walking out the door.
And I love the kind of positive take that you've taken on coaching, but realistically speaking, and in my experience, I have seen coaching being used as the stick almost. And unfortunately, in some instances, people are performance managed via the coaching systems that are put in place into their organizations. How have you seen that, or have you seen that, and what are your thoughts on that working relationship when you were saying, should be a joint project and there shouldn't be an expert novice according to that definition? Does that work if one of the coach is a line manager, for example, and they are then the expert in a different capacity, in a different context, but then it's kind of emanating that relationship as a coach-coachee?
Yeah, I think you've really kind of ticked into a real challenge where there is a risk of coaching being at best misunderstood and at worst maybe misapplied and misused. And I think it is linked to a focus on perhaps performance metrics. Like if there isn't a clarity about what coaching is for and why we're doing it in a particular organization, then that lets in kind of a fog, an opaqueness, a murkiness of the dominant paradigm of standards and testing and performativity. And let's measure this. Let's measure you within this coaching system. And I think you're right. It becomes not about an individual growth and they're having their own agenda. It becomes about something else. And again, I would question whose agenda is being served, and certainly not enabling that member of staff to thrive. When we're talking about line management, I think that's really tricky. You know, I've been in situations where in the past my coach or my named coach in that organization has also been my line manager, and I've been in that situation as well. And I do understand that when you're talking about the sustainability of putting in some kind of coaching, and you're thinking about the huge costs and time implications and challenges for school leaders to make that work. But in looking for a solution for scalability, for sustainability, I think that there is a real possibility for role conflicts. If a coach is also a line manager, performance appraiser, team lead. I mean, arguably, Sabrina, I don't know about you, but I do think there's always some kind of power-related issues in coaching dynamics. But if your coach is also your line manager, I think there can be real blurring of boundaries. And I know from an experience in way back in my past where I had a fabulous line manager who at the time was also my coach. But I really felt that I couldn't completely be with her. You know, I trusted her immensely, but not in, I thought there's some things I want to unpick with her. But I thought, oh, I don't know, am I coming to you? Have you got your line manager hat on? Have you got your performance appraiser hat on? Or have you got your coach hat on? And so there's two real tenets of a secure coaching relationship, trust and confidentiality. I don't know if you can have those.
And I think I agree with you there, and I can see it in some of the trainees that I coach, and they always wonder, where's this going to go? What's going to happen with this information? And ultimately, when your coach has got to think about business need as well, because they're then accountable, and they hear something in a coaching session that might put the organization or the class or 30 students, 100 students, and impact them, you can't quite contain it to yourself as much as you'd like to. And I can see real issues of conflict in terms of for the coach as well as the coachee. And I'm not sure how we can mitigate that other than try not to have your line manager or someone who's thinking about the bigger grand scheme of things when you're trying to develop an individual. But I don't think there's enough resource out there to get, just to get a coach, a staff coach for everyone. I don't know how else to do it. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Vicky, I completely agree with you. And I think that it goes back to why are you wanting, or why is that school community wanting coaching as part of their way of being in the first place? And I agree with you. You're less likely to challenge or induce dissonance when your coach is your line manager, and actually therefore compromising the integrity of maybe what you want the coaching to be there for in the first place. In the messy reality of actually implementing a coaching culture, I think is really different than kind of this idealized, like, what do we want our coaching culture to be? And we can't go away from that. And you picking up kind of those practical barriers is an important consideration. There are real and significant practical hurdles to implementing a school-based coaching culture. And top three in no particular order, I think, in money, time and energy, and these competing priorities. So and I guess what I mean by that is perhaps there's an unsaid expectation that coaching will always support the organizational school agenda. So there's an inherent tension if it isn't. And I mean, that's a really brave, courageous leadership team who say, do you know what, regardless of what this individual wants to focus on, we're going to go with it. And I think that is incredibly challenging and a real and significant hurdle to consider for schools.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the dream, isn't it?
I mean, if I think of like an example of where, I mean, when way back, when I first came across being, I guess, my first dalliance in being a coach, and a very mediocre one at that, I have to admit, Sabrina. I was teaching in year 6 full time, and I was coaching a colleague in nursery, and there's practical barriers. We were fitting in our coaching interactions in the different timings of the school day. You know, we're overlapping with her lunch, and I remember her eating a sandwich. You know, I was running from PPA and being like, oh yeah, like leaving the things on the desk for the cover teacher, and just it wasn't appropriate. You know, I wasn't present. She was, bless her, thinking about the next things that were happening. And I remember the first time I was in a different setting and was in a place where I could able to influence more the organisational elements. We did give colleagues time in the school day that was over and above. But with that came huge compromises and arguably ethical dilemmas. Like, it meant then that we could only have 2 coaching pairs at a time benefiting from that. So then it was who gets to decide who can be part of that coaching experience. So, you know, these compromises, when you actually go from the ideal of, wow, we want to be coaches, we want coaching to be prolific in our school, to actually what that looks like in the messy reality is really tricky.
And I think as well, it's becoming very formalized. It's becoming very, we must capture that conversation. How have you captured that reflection? What have you done? How have you measured the progress? And it's just become this real kind of, oh my gosh, I wanted to inspire and motivate someone to be a better version of themselves. And now I've got 5-6 hours additional admin I have to do in a week from a 5-minute conversation. I'm not sure if this is for me. And really, then it's not only the coach that's got all of this admin, because the coachee now needs to do that. And you need to show the trends and justify the job role as a coach. And you think, hang on, I haven't got enough time in the day for this. So is it that it's this formalization? Is it maybe a bit too much? Or do we need to go back to what it's about and just having those meaningful conversations with people to identify what they want to do and get them to help themselves get there?
I think that's a really key thing. And also, when you're talking about what does a coaching culture look like in a school? I mean, arguably it's a way of being. You can't really put your finger on it, but you know when it's there. And I think it is about going back to curious professionals who feel safe to challenge, who feel safe to kind of consider can I challenge the normal things that we do here? Can I offer alternative perspectives? And I think there are 2 other points to really make when we're considering inadvertent or misuse of coaching in schools. And one is to step away from this myth that coaching is the domain of the struggling teacher, that actually coaching is to fix something in someone else, you know, to kind of top up or to help you get to the next, I don't know, grade or standard. It's what you were saying, you know, so that we can track you through your process and track you through your coaching conversation. And looping back to what we were talking about to start with, about it being an exchange of experience and expertise, this joint project. And yes, it may sound flowery and skipping through daisies and kind of butterflies, kind of wonderful idealistic thing. But if we hold on to that spirit of reciprocity, I think we've really got to do that, particularly in 2024 at the moment, with all those external challenges that are knocking on the door of teachers and leaders in education. It's kind of, coaching isn't to fix something, it's to enable a spirit of curiosity and professional dialogue. And if we let those performative overtones creep in, I think it can create apprehension and then completely steps away from the purpose of coaching.
And I've seen that. I have seen that, where, you know, we've got teams in organisations that are focusing on coaching, and they've got graphs and charts, and it looks beautiful for a report. But you go speak to the teachers and you speak to the staff, and the experience is not a positive one. And what is indicated is that, you know, someone's pushed them to do things against their will, in some cases, via a discussion that's just under a guise. And I get really sad when I hear those stories and I see those, and I kind of think, well, that person, that individual has now lost that sense of trust in a process that really was there to enable them. And then you think, if this continues, what is left for us, our teaching sector, and what is the next thing? What's the next step? Because it seems to be becoming more and more common, and I'm hoping conversations like today will allow us to reflect on that coaching culture in our organisations and think, do you know what, are we doing this in the most productive and efficient and effective way, or are we at risk of going down this path where that trust is going to be taken? So I really do appreciate kind of this self-reflective journey I'm undertaking on this conversation with you, and I do, I really love that, you know, you're talking about the reciprocity from everyone, and I think maybe more senior leaders need to consider that, you know, what culture are they investing in?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, no one is taking away the huge challenge at the moment of being a school leader. You know, there's a shifting policy landscape, there's all the external constraints, there can be internal diverse agendas going on. And I think it's, you know, it'd be naive to say like, oh, come on, school leaders, you know, think about this. And I know as a school leader myself, like I have been totally blindsided by kind of performative overtones as well. You know, kind of how can I neatly talk about the impact of coaching in a couple of sentences for this report? And I know I'm in this really lucky position now where I can step back and kind of reflect and look in again. Picking up on what you were saying about, you know, your experience of individuals who say this coaching isn't working for me, I'm not feeling part of it. There's Professor Christian van Nieuwburg, who writes extensively in various things, and he's a real thinker on kind of coaching in education. He talks about the importance of democratic voluntary involvement in coaching in education. And I guess to unpick that, how I read what he's saying is, you know, for democratic is that everyone where possible has the opportunity to partake in some kind of coaching interactions in the school if they want. Voluntary, there is the choice to engage, a real choice, if they want or if it's not for them. And that involvement is not necessarily deciding everything, but they're part of shaping the process of what coaching is in our own context. And I think, again, having that as kind of a fundamental acknowledgement, if a school is going to adopt this kind of coaching culture or consider amending what they've already got or growing on it, is a really key point to think about.
Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques. either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionises the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Artificial intelligence is in the news after a study at a UK university conducted a real-life Turing test. The University of Reading published its findings in the PLOS ONE Science Journal. In the study, 33 alias student profiles were set up by the university's tech team. The alias students were all completing Bachelor of Science degrees in psychology across different years of study. The researchers helped the students to complete a range of exams and online assignments using unedited answers written by ChatGPT-4. Researchers found that 94% of their AI submissions slipped by the examiners unnoticed, and the AI students did better than their peers, with an 83.4% chance they could outperform a random selection of real student submissions. One of the study's authors said it should be a wake-up call for educators. A recent UNESCO survey found that less than 10% of schools worldwide have policies or guidance in place regarding generative AI. Further details of the study can be found in the PLOS ONE Science Journal. Middlesbrough Council East of England is to trial auto-enrolment for free school meals, according to the local government website. The pilot scheme will ensure automatic enrolment as a safety net for children whose families do not apply. Parents will have the right to opt out. The council said reasons for families not claiming free school meals included not understanding the application process, low levels of literacy, language barriers, and stigma. A sample of 60 Middlesbrough households found 11 eligible families were not signed up for free school meals, and the council said this meant schools missing out on thousands of pounds in funding. A similar process introduced in Sheffield in 2016 saw £3.8 million worth of extra pupil premium funding allocated as a result of auto-enrolment. The Star in Sheffield reports that universities in the city have launched litter patrols to reduce what they call end-of-term dumping. According to the article, enforcers will be out in force over the coming days as tenancies come to an end and 50,000 students move out of their rented accommodation. The joint approach by Sheffield and Hallam universities comes after residents complained about piles of rubbish left on pavements. Both universities have said that they work closely with the City Council and give regular reminders to students to put excess waste in bags neatly outside. A spokesperson went on to highlight that since 2013, students in Sheffield have raised over £1 million for the British Heart Foundation by donating items at the end of term rather than throwing them out. Schools Week reports that trusts are warning they face having to make significant redundancies and have no choice but to exclude vulnerable children following shock cuts to SEND budgets in the middle of the year. Multi-academy trusts have written to Norfolk County Council in a last-ditch bid to avoid a funding cliff edge, after learning last week how a revised approach to top-up funding would impact them. As first reported by Schools Week in January, Norfolk was not then on track to meet its government safety valve agreement. In January, it received £70 million to balance its high-needs budget, but was told to submit revised plans and to join an enhanced monitoring scheme. The Council has adjusted overall top-up funding allocations to remain within budget, but this means allocations will fall. The Council acknowledge it will create some challenges for schools. The letter, signed by the heads of 5 multi-academy trusts in the area, have revealed their shock and disappointment and stated it will result in significant redundancies. It goes on to say the effect on children will be negative in the extreme. The full article can be read on the Schools Week website. Finally, the BBC News website reports that Japanese Emperor Naruhito has returned to Oxford University as part of his state visit. The Emperor, then Crown Prince, attended Merton College, complete with security detail, during the early 1980s. A former roommate of the Emperor said he was very down-to-earth and didn't use a title, preferring to be called Hero whilst he completed his studies. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
So if we kind of go back a little bit to some of the themes you were talking about earlier in kind of the culture of an organisation, what processes, systems, what the considerations do we need to have to enhance that culture that we might already have or we don't yet have in our organisations?
I think to start with, and particularly kind of stemming on from this focus on performance metrics, or trying to step away from that, and this kind of deficit narrative around coaching to fix, is there's perhaps needs to be more room for emotions. And I say that a little bit nervously, actually, which is interesting. Kind of, I really feel that there needs to be more active engagement within those coaching conversations, where recognizing the power that emotions can focus attention. They can really be motivational and guidance for action. And I say that as someone who professionally, I'm really rubbish at that. I'm kind of quite rubbish at showing vulnerability. And I know that I've been in coaching conversations where I have not reciprocally shared the passions and frustrations back with my coachee. And I kind of now step back and think, have I hindered the learning opportunities that come from that? Was I not normalizing those kind of emotional reactions? And I think having a space, I'm not suggesting that emotions are everyone's crying all the time and everywhere, but what I mean is that it's okay to challenge and be thoughtful and take risks and have a culture where it's all right to say that, and to say, I'm feeling cross about this, I'm feeling happy about this, I'm feeling excited, because embracing those emotions, I think, can lead to really enriching, meaningful experiences. And it's something which I've come to much later in my professional career, and I'm still working on myself. But I wonder whether to do that, there does then need to be a careful cultivation by leaders for a culture where it's safe for people to do that and to have those really open, to be vulnerable. And leaders have to find the confidence to demonstrate that in appropriate ways themselves as well.
And I think along with that vulnerability, there needs to be the acceptance of co-construction of whatever that pathway is. I think often I've noticed that there's an agenda to the coaching, and that purpose is, say, you need to improve that person's behavior management or classroom management through coaching. And I think, okay. But ultimately, I think from what you said and what I believe in, it should be that coachee determining, actually, I know me, I know what I need to do, and this is what I'd like to work on, and let's co-create and discuss in a professional and collaborative manner to try and improve. And I think once you enter coaching through that way, the organic growth is far more rewarding, because you've got that vested interest from the coachee who sees the value in what they're saying and doing. Whereas the other way, it again goes down that performance management and a career management, and that trust, and your barriers are up, and you think, oh gosh. The other thing I want to just pick up on, and in relation to coaching, which is obviously that the collaboration and everything you're saying, how do you find this ties in with the concept of mentoring? And I know they're often two terms that are banded together, coaching and mentoring. Do you see that as a distinguishable difference, and are the practices different? And what have you come across in your time?
Yeah, I agree with you that the terms coaching and mentoring are often conflated. And is there a generic difference between the two? I mean, that's the golden question. If you were to push me on trying to sort of distinguish them from my point of view, we have to look at intent. We have to look at intent of the relationship. And for me, in a more mentoring relationship, the intent is perhaps there for more specific guidance, or dare I say advice. That there is some more kind of structured support, not in a performance way, but maybe in someone who's new to the profession or is in a different role. But I do think that there is such a broad range of strategies and techniques that come under the same umbrella. And I know that there are some thinkers who would argue that there isn't really a difference before. But to loop back to what we were saying about right at the beginning, it's in your context. If you want to define and label this kind of interaction or this kind of relationship as coaching or mentoring, and everyone understands why we are and what the purpose is, then I wonder whether we need a universal application. It's actually about the participants really having clarity and ownership over that interaction, that they are that joint project, that collectivity that we were talking about before. I have been really lucky to be involved in a kind of grassroots mentoring process recently, and it was great to hear that when I went on the big Zoom call with everybody, there was with real clarity about, in our conversations, this is what we mean by mentoring. And I thought, great. I mean, there were some things that I thought, oh, okay, I personally maybe wouldn't put that as mentoring, but I thought, when I'm talking within this group for these people, this is our definition. And I thought, how helpful. It just took away any ambiguity. And it meant that we could come together thinking about not the definition of mentoring, but actually the way of being, about how we communicate and interact in that space with each other.
Brilliant. Yeah. So it's a mutual understanding, and I think that's the key thing to note from that. And you also talked about the could you talk about further empowering teachers through that coaching process, and the kind of impact that you've seen, and what you would consider as a success story, and maybe share something about how the coaching is a really positive tool or a model to use? And are there any specific models that you prefer? Because there's loads of models out there, isn't there, in terms of having those coaching approaches, the GROW model and Oscar and all the other stuff. So a success story, if you wouldn't mind, Lucy, and if you've used any models that you prefer or anything that seems to be working for you.
I think a success story is one I'm considering in my time in international education, and working with and through an absolute superstar of a colleague. And it was how we used coaching interactions for the facilitation of sustainable change within the large team that she was actually leading. And it was the sustainability of that change that I think is important. And when you talk about success stories, it sometimes isn't a wow moment or a big kind of, oh, this is so different. It's actually somebody who has, the way that my colleague grew in her ability to co-construct her team, so that they were really focusing on what those community of learners, those little people in her team, those children needed, I think it was fantastic. She herself started to use her own goal setting, her own action planning, her own solution focused approaches. She was really self-directing those conversations. I was doing active listening, but I don't really feel as her coach that I was actually doing a lot. She was doing all the work. It was really much that, she was there herself saying, can I talk through this with you? And it was just about listening and occasionally repeating what she was saying back to me and giving her the space and time. And she was the problem solver. She was the one who actually went out of there having solved where she needed to go next. And I think that's what coaching in the best examples can do. It can offer a space and time to unpick assumptions, to kind of look at things in a different way, to challenge normalized behaviors. And I remember once when we were talking about it, she was trying to work out a bit of a sticky situation with another colleague. And it was her just having the time to think about visualizing what if she wasn't her, if she was another colleague, what might they say? And just giving her that space and time to kind of unpick that. But with that takes huge trust. And I know that I've also been in coaching relationships where I wasn't the best person to be that person's coach. We didn't have that trust. It wasn't that we didn't have respect for each other, but there wasn't that alignment. And it's kind of going back to what you were saying before about the performativity aspects. I think if it is so much linked to kind of a formalized process, then sometimes you can get coaching relationships who feel they have to kind of limp on, but both parties know that they're not enabling the other to thrive. So in the best examples, the relationship has to grow and be organic as well. And sometimes you get to the end of that coaching relationship, you still have this fantastic professional relationship, but actually you don't need it in that kind of more that focused coaching interaction. In terms of models, I mean, I know there's ones out there, and you hear quite a lot of ones like the GROW model bandied around. My my reticence to kind of say what model to use is because I think there needs to be diversity in the coaching techniques that's tailored to the needs and preferences of the individual that you're working with.
Do you find you swap and change, and you do a bit of this and a bit of that, and you just follow the coachee's kind of lead rather than, say, applying a model?
Yes, and I think that I am not an expert coach. I've worked with many, many people who are far more knowledgeable and experienced in lots of the different techniques. But I think it is about making sure that there is some underpinning principles around your coaching interaction. Potentially the most important thing, like coming together as a pair and saying, like, how are we going to be together? And what do you want from me as your coach? And how can I be that I'm going to best support you? And that also evolves over time. And there is real training needs. A very sage person recently commented to me about, before any school leader or any group of interested professionals consider putting coaching into their school, they need to access really high quality coaching themselves. They need to put themselves in a position where they know how it feels, where they can kind of be part of a process of arguably that learning and that exposure to their emotions and their underpinning assumptions themselves. And I thought, such a simple but powerful reminder that actually the leaders and whoever wants to put this in has to be part of this way of being. They have to be authentically part of that process as well.
Excellent. And I can speak from experience that I studied coaching and I went through the courses and I learned all about models, the frameworks and all of that stuff, but it did not compare to going through it myself and thinking, I want to make someone else feel like what I felt like when I was being coached. And I think that has changed my approach to coaching, my mindset. So I definitely will recommend that. Live on air, everyone. Please, if you haven't, go find yourself a really good coach and see just how reflective, self-aware you can become and create those realistic, outcomes for yourself rather than for someone else, because that's ultimately what's going to keep you in your day job, because you'll get that self-satisfaction from what you've achieved rather than doing the job to please someone else. Which obviously ties into your retention idea that you mentioned earlier. So just kind of to summarize everything that we're going through today and talking about it as we approach the end of the show, have you got any advice for anyone out there who at those different stages, whether they are coach, whether they're coachee, whether they are leaders, maybe you could address all three and just say that what should we be looking for? What should we try? What should we aim for? And what's next steps? So someone is doing it all right and kind of established it. How can they make it even better? And in your opinion?
Oh goodness. I don't know.
No pressure.
No pressure. Well, I'm coming to this as a real curious individual. I'm not coming to this at all with anyone who's got any of the answers. I wonder if when I think about proposing a coaching culture or just really getting behind the power of coaching, it is about asking the why questions, like why do we want to invest in this? Because it is an investment. We know that, Sabrina, like it's a huge investment in time, in energy. Other things will have to go. There's a real bravery and courage involved in saying we're going to go with this coaching kind of culture that underpins how we want to be in our organization. So it's having a real underpinning of why we want to do this and holding on to that when the detours start to happen and the inevitable hurdles and challenges happen. I think for me, it is absolutely not a panacea. Coaching is not going to solve all the complexities and all the challenges that education in 2024 brings, but done really well, coaching interactions offer space and time for individuals, including the coaches themselves, to think deeply and critically, to sense make, to challenge, to stay rooted in curiosity and the values of why people came into teaching and education in the first place. I think it really takes you back to kind of your values and belief systems. And through kind of that engagement with emotions and our deep-seated values about why we're in this fabulous profession, I think we can gain more self-awareness about where forward. We kind of then build ourselves those opportunities and choices. I would say, in my experience, where I've seen it and where I've been part of where it hasn't become a way of being, it's because coaching was a bolt-on. It was because it was seen maybe more as a logistical exercise, and kind of what you were saying earlier about, you know, almost, oh, we won't do performance management, we'll do coaching. You know, kind of like sort of under sort of the emperor's new clothes type element, you know, under a new umbrella. But I think a coaching culture will evolve over time. It is and should be expected that there will be challenges, and acknowledging that straight off the bat, I think can take away some of the heat when they come. I would also say, I think maybe as a final kind of point, is that the quality of the interactions, the quality of the coaching relationships, the quality of the learning that's possible is arguably far more significant than any label that's assigned, even if people don't call it coaching. However, having clarity maybe help mitigate against some of those performative overtones, but actually it's about investing in people. It's about trusting our colleagues that they're the best experts in themselves.
That's really quite a motivational and really a lovely thought to conclude today's show on. So thank you so much, and I do appreciate my own kind of reflection that I've gone through on this show today. So I am grateful to you, Lucy, for everything. If anyone wants to talk to you a bit further about coaching, the coaching culture, how is it best for them to get in touch with you?
Oh, I would love any feedback or any thoughts about that. Yeah, people are more than welcome to talk to me. I'm on Twitter on @LucyHwood, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I would love any probing or thoughts or feedback on their own experiences. Would be brilliant to keep this conversation going. Thanks so much, Sabrina.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you, listeners, for the show today. I'm going to catch you next time, everybody. Thanks now. Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.